April 14th marks the 10th anniversary of the first electoral victory of President of Venezuela Nicolas Maduro after the physical departure of Commander Hugo Chavez. As the France's Constitutional Council approved key elements of President Emmanuel Macron's controversial pension reform, protesters continue to rally in front of Paris City Hall. Middle Eastern nations commemorate International Al-Quds Day to support the Palestinian people as well as to reject the Israeli occupation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On April 14th marks the 10th anniversary of the first electoral victory of the President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, after the physical departure of Commander Hugo Chavez. With a humble upbringing, Nicolas Maduro, who was a bus driver, stood out as a union leader before being elected national lawmaker in the year 2000. During the presidency of Hugo Chavez, he also served as President of the National Assembly, Foreign Affairs Minister, and Vice President of the Republic. On April 14, 2013, after the physical departure of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez, Venezuelans held general polls and elected Nicolas Maduro as President of the Republic, winning the post with 50.61% of the votes for the 2013-2019 term. Maduro won 2 elections, but his stay in office has not been an easy one. He had a first term full of constant attacks on the sovereignty of the country, assassination attempts, deepening of the blockade, and repeated interference, and his resilience shows the strength and conviction of President Maduro as well as the trust of the Venezuelan people in his leadership. According to political observers, these U.S. hostile actions were confronted with the diplomacy of peace that characterizes the people of Venezuela. On May 20th, 2018, a second election was held where Maduro won 67.84% of the votes for the 2019-2025 term. Peru once again called on Mexico, Colombia, and Chile to hand over the pro-tempore presidency of the Pacific Alliance to the Andean nation without further delay, and stated that if a state fails to do so, it would incur international responsibility. The Mexican government, under the presidency of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has refused to hand over the leadership of the economic and trade bloc to Peru because it considers that in the Andean nation there is a spurious government under President Dina Boluarte, who assumed power after the dismissal in December of Pedro Castillo. The Peruvian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the government of Boluarte proposed carrying out diplomatic consultations with the members of the Pacific Alliance in order to carry out the transfer of the pro-tempore presidency of the group, which was due to be handed over by Mexico to Peru in November. The Pacific Alliance is an integration mechanism based on the free movement of goods, services, and capital that seeks to become a power targeting the markets of Asia. In Bolivia, Defense Minister Edmundo Novillo confirmed that from Friday a battalion of 170 military personnel will reinforce the fight against fuel smuggling in 12 Bolivian border municipalities identified as illegal fuel exit points. The senior official explained that the measure is part of a package of measures put in place by the government to combat this illicit trade, and that the armed forces will mobilize their troops to work together with inspectors from the National Hydrocarbons Agency. Novillo described that this contingent will be made up of 34 command structures in each municipality and 136 troops from troop personnel. He added that land, river, and even air patrols will be carried out if necessary and in all border areas. For his part, the Minister of Hydrocarbons, Franklin Molina, during the press conference, estimated that the set of actions put into practice as of Friday will bring savings for Bolivia of up to $1 billion a year. On Thursday, the National Migration Institute of Mexico announced the discovery of 209 migrants in an abandoned trailer, accounting as the second such incident in 2023. The report indicates that the agents of the institution and the National Guard located the vehicle on a highway near the town of Nuevo Teapa in the state of Veracruz. Among the asylum seekers were 161 adults from Guatemala, 6 from Honduras and El Salvador, respectively, and 5 from Ecuador, according to the authorities. The asylum seekers were trying to reach the U.S. border, and after the officers' intervention, they were transferred to an immigration station where they will undergo the corresponding procedures to be repatriated. Among them are also 25 unaccompanied minors who will be under the guardianship of the System for Integral Family Development. On March 6, Mexican authorities found 343 migrants, including 103 unaccompanied minors, in an abandoned freight truck container on the side of a highway, also in Veracruz. In Guatemala, during the 2022 to 2023 forest fire season, more than 3,000 hectares have been ravaged in the country, according to the Executive Secretariat of the National Coordinator for Disaster Reduction. In his report, the disaster management further detailed that the consumption of these hectares derived from 496 claims registered in the national territory. Of the total, 399 were reported as forest, while the other 97 were reported as non-forest. As of this Friday, the Secretariat accounted for 35 active fires located in the department of Baja Verapaz, Chiquimula, El Progreso, Guatemala, Petén, Quiche, Solola, and Zacapa. In this sense, the Emergency Response Coordination Center advised the population not to make unnecessary bonfires in wooded areas, as this could lead to a forest fire of great magnitude. A report available in the United States reveals that former President Donald Trump made tens of millions of dollars in foreign business deals while in office, pointing to potential conflicts of interest. The watchdog organization Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, known as CREW, looked into the tycoon's tax records and financial data and found that his organization raised up to $160 million in international business deals while he was in office, explaining that the earning of such income breaks with the assurances made to voters by the business person during his campaign for the White House. Donald Trump became the first former president of the United States to be criminally charged after being accused of 34 counts of falsifying business records, and for which he appeared in court on April 4th in New York. On Thursday, Trump returned to a court in the same city and faced questions under oath for nearly 7 hours in a case of commercial fraud filed by the state of New York. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Vietnam on Friday, seeking to expand diplomatic ties with Hanoi, days after a flare-up in tensions with China over Taiwan. Blinken, who is passing through Hanoi on his way to a meeting of Group of 7 foreign ministers in Japan, will meet senior Vietnamese leaders on Saturday to pave the way for a possible diplomatic upgrade with the country. The two countries have increasingly close trade ties, while both share concerns about China's growing power in the region. According to analysts, Hanoi may be more reluctant to upset Beijing, its northern neighbor and key economic partner, despite rival claims in the South China Sea, while the United States simply believes it needs Vietnam to counter China in the South China Sea. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back From the South. On Friday, France's top constitutional body has cleared the raising of the state pension age from 62 to 64 and rejected calls for a referendum by political opponents. Despite the Constitutional Council ruling, the body has said some articles in the bill had legal flaws. In March, the government used a special constitutional power to force through the reforms without a vote, and 12 days of protests have been held against the reforms since January. A day of high tension is expected in the streets, and security forces are already deployed in several landmark locations. On the eve of the 13th day of protests against the reform, crowds gathered in different parts of the country. Protesters continue to rally in front of Paris City Hall after France's Constitutional Court approved key elements of President Emmanuel Macron's controversial pension reform. According to the police report, up to 10,000 people will gather in Paris on Friday night. French authorities erected barriers and deployed dozens of riot police in the surroundings of the Constitutional Council and have warned of the presence of several hundreds of left-wing radicals who claim they would vandalize and clash to the police forces. The decision represents a victory for Macron, but analysts say it has come at a significant expense of the 45-year-old president, while causing months of upheaval for the country with sometimes violent protests that have left hundreds injured. The president's personal ratings are near an all-time low, and many voters have been outraged by his decision to defy hostile public opinion and push the pension law through the lower house of parliament without a vote. On Friday, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban asserted that Ukraine is a financially non-existent country, emphasizing that as soon as the United States and Europe stop supporting the administration of Volodymyr Zelensky, the armed conflict will end. The Hungarian Prime Minister added that Europe spent tens of billions of dollars to support Ukraine, noting that the European economy itself lacks such financing, and he stressed that this cannot continue indefinitely. Orban also pointed out that Hungary also participates in the financing of Ukraine through the general budgets of the European Union, despite which the situation of the Hungarian minority in Transcarpathia is steadily deteriorating. In January, the European bloc signed a memorandum to provide Ukraine with $18 billion in microfinancial assistance over 2023. On Friday in Beijing, the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Kan met with his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock to discuss issues of mutual interest such as the Ukrainian and Taiwanese crisis. During the meeting, Qin said that his nation defends the idea that the only way to resolve the Ukrainian crisis is to promote peace and talks, and stressed that regarding the export of military items, China is adopting a responsible attitude and will not provide weapons to relevant parties in the conflict, as it will manage and control the exports of dual-use items in accordance with the law. On the other hand, European Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock urged Beijing to ask Russia to halt its military operations in Ukraine. For her part, Baerbock stressed Germany abides by the One China policy, according to which Beijing is recognized as the sole legitimate government of China, and Berlin does not maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan. China's Foreign Minister Qin Kan also emphasized that the Ukrainian crisis has become a profound lesson that deserves deep reflection by all parties.
I have exchanged views with the German Foreign Minister on the Ukraine issue. China has always believed that the only way out of the crisis in Ukraine is to persuade peace and promote talks. Since the outbreak of the crisis, President Xi Jinping has put forward 4 common points, and 3 points of reflection, calling for a political solution. Not long ago, China released its position on a political solution to the crisis in Ukraine, the core of which is also to promote talks on all nuclear issues.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461, and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In a new episode of violence, Israeli forces in Palestine on Thursday attacked Muslim worshippers gathered at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied Jerusalem. The Israeli operation took place at one of the gates of the mosque, which is the third holiest site for Muslims. Around 35,000 Palestinian worshippers went to perform their prayers on the 22nd day of the holy month of Ramadan, defying provocation by agents of the occupation regime who were deployed at the gates of the mosque. Last week, Israeli forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, injuring 300 people with rubber bullets, pepper spray, and stun grenades, an act condemned by the international community. On Friday, mobilizations began in the capital of Iran to commemorate International Al-Quds Day and support the Palestinian people, as well as to reject the Israeli occupation. Iranians rallied in Tehran, the capital of the Persian nation, chanting the slogan, "Palestine is the focus of the unity of the Islamic world," according to reports from a local news agency. On the matter, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said that participating in the Al-Quds Day marches is the embodiment of the unity and cohesion of the Islamic nation. The participants also condemned the attack on Al-Aqsa Mosque and its desecration by the Zionist entity that carries out these criminal acts to cover up its internal crisis. Also in Syria, Palestinians held a military parade on the occasion of Al-Quds Day in the Yarmouk refugee camp in the capital Damascus. Local media report that Palestinians and Syrian popular and official entities commemorate the day with political, artistic, and cultural activities that ratify the support for the Palestinian struggle in that occupied city. The International Al-Quds Day is commemorated every year on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the lunar calendar, characterized by fasting by Muslims around the world and a way to enhance Islam's culture, tradition, and faith. The leader in the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and representative of the Islamic Jihad movement in Syria, Abu Hamad Fouad, reaffirmed that the Palestinian people will never allow the illegal Israeli occupation to erase their cultural and religious heritage.
We have been living for over 75 years now as refugees in the Yarmouk camp, away from our country and homes. We assert that we want to return to Palestine and that we will not allow the occupation to abuse our Palestinian people in the West Bank, nor will we allow the occupation to change the identity of the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
On Friday, thousands of Yemenis rallied in Sana'a to commemorate Quds Day in solidarity with the Palestinians in context where the Ansarullah movement and the Arab coalition exchanged prisoners. Participants in the rallies carried Yemeni flags, Palestinian flags, slogans of freedom, and banners of International Quds Day, calling for its liberation from the filth of the Zionist occupation and rejecting the enemy's crimes against the Palestinian people. On Friday, hundreds of captives from Yemen's brutal civil war were reunited with friends and family on the first day of a 3-day operation that will see the release of nearly 900 detainees. The International Committee of the Red Cross reported as hope grows for an end to the devastating 8-year war.
We came today to say to the whole world that we are part of the resistance and that we'll mobilize relying on God's strength and power because Jerusalem is our cause and it is still in our hearts.
We have come to the end of this newsbrief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.